Everyone, welcome. I see people are starting to join. This is one of my favorite lives of the week, and I'm always thrilled that I get to sit in this seat with Andra Watkins. Hi, Andra. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Sam?
Good. It's funny. I I don't know if you ever get over just being able to work and talk about this stuff with people that you love is a real gift. Even if you're talking about some of the most horrific shit on earth.
Well, I said I never thought that I would be at this age talking about this stuff. I really hoped that once I didn't think about it anymore, I'd never have to talk about it again. But
Yeah.
one of the pluses is it's brought people like you and Lincoln Square and all into my life. And I've just met so many awesome people, not just in interviews like this, but people who are joining the chat and people that I've gotten to know. So it it has its real upsides.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Building community
Mhm,
is a it is a bulwark against what's happening.
mhm.
It is the bulwark, really. We can't do this alone. None of us can. Well, on that end, we want to talk about white Christian nationalism, not because we want to, but because we really have to. Last week we talked about um, birth control and how birth control. I mean, look, in 16, Clinton warned that abortion was on the chopping block, and nobody believed her. Um, and now there are these other issues. I mean, it seems ridiculous that um, they would want to ban birth control, but that's what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So if everyone in the audience didn't see our discussion last week, you should go back and watch that. But there's a new kind of twist, and you brought this up, and you've been writing about it this week. Um, there is one form of birth control that Project 2025 does approve of. Can you explain that to us? Because I was surprised.
Yes. So last year, when I was writing about Project 2025 and interpreting the Christian nationalist language for readers, Roger Severino wrote the Department of Health and Human Services section, and he worked in that department and I believe led that department for a while during the first era of this regime
Mhm.
between 2016 and 2020. So Um, he's a devout Opus Dei Christian nationalist Catholic, and Sam and I are going to go through briefly what the different factions are later in the show. But he wrote a section on fertility awareness based methods of contraception, really strongly endorsing them in Project 2025. It was mentioned multiple times to force insurance companies to pay for the supplies, to make it an official recommended type of contraception. And I made notes all over my copy of Project 2025 about how strange it was that they were endorsing this thing. At one point, he even said, "We don't want it to be called the Catholic Rhythm Method." So, if you've
Right.
heard of the Catholic Rhythm Method, fertility awareness based methods include the calendar method, which is the calendar rhythm method, which is the Catholic rhythm method,
Right. Right.
and the temperature method and the cervical mucus method. So those are the three methods that are encompassed by fertility awareness based methods. And I always saw those things as we're using this to conceive because
Sure.
they help women know when you're ovulating. It's very typical if you're trying to get pregnant that using these methods combined can give you the best window or the best estimate
Or
of when you should try to conceive, and women who are having fertility problems sometimes use those methods to try to conceive.
well,
So I've
all
always thought, go ahead.
I would say many women. I mean, you start out your life, you have a couple, you get married, and you want to have a baby, and you want to have the best odds. I think that's really common to just understand your own body and
Right,
understand when you're fertile.
right. But this endorsement of fertility awareness based methods in the white Christian nationalist camp is very much going to be, this is what you have to use if you don't want to be pregnant. I've always equated it with, we want to be pregnant, so this is when we're going to try.
Yes.
But the Catholic rhythm method is, it's one reason why historically so many Catholic families were huge, because that's how ineffective it is at
Right.
being contraception. So the
Right.
combination of Christian nationalists not wanting to teach at sex education, not wanting girls to know how their bodies work, and taking away contraception and saying you have to use the rhythm method or the fertility awareness based methods. I mean, if you use all three methods together, they are 77 to 98% effective, which is a pretty big spread. If that's all I'd had when I could be pregnant, no man would have ever put his penis anywhere near my, that is too big a spread for
Yeah.
me to ever rely on. Plus, you have to start counting where you're at a year before you can rely on it for anything. And you have to understand how your body works, which I never did. And we talked about that last week.
Yep.
So the notion that a woman could get married and immediately start relying on this to prevent pregnancy, for me, is pretty laughable. But that's what I would expect them to come out and tell women they could use.
It's outlandish and it's absurd. I mean, any, if I've ever, any of my women friends or partners or siblings or anyone, if their period was regular, everyone's blown away. They were like,
Mine never
what?
was. Mine never
No,
well,
nobody's,
yeah, yeah. So,
it doesn't have, it's regulars is actually the irregular, right?
yeah.
It's the exception. And so to rely on that, like, first of all, if that was as a boy, as a man, if that was all I had to count on, I also would not put, anything near any. But that's not how humans work, especially not how 18-year-old kids work who are full of these hormones and this kind of thing. But I wonder a couple of questions. I was surprised to read your piece in the first part because it seems like I was like, well, wait, they do promote some form of contraception, and then I was like, oh, actually, it's not contraception at all. So you think that it feels to me like one, they're promoting it because it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Um, and do you think there's also an element um, of promoting this because they're taking everything else away? And they're like, "Well, actually, we do believe in contraception, and here's proof. We have this method."
Yes, no, to me, fertility awareness-based methods, calling them contraception is one of the games they play with language. Christian nationalists love to play games
Yes.
with language. To me, fertility awareness-based methods are ways to know when you're ovulating and when you're most fertile. To use that as contraception is, it's the way that they're trying to rename something and say, we're going to take all these things away, but you can use this method. Where women, you have to track things every day, you have to do all these things all the time. It's very time consuming, and I didn't even know until I wrote that piece that a woman's body, when she can be pregnant, she undergoes 480 hormone fluctuations a cycle.
Oh my
So
god.
that's one thing that contributes to premenstrual syndrome. I mean, sometimes it would be terrible for me, sometimes it would be less terrible, sometimes I wouldn't have it at all. And it's the variation in those hormone fluctuations that causes that. And you can't predict that. That's just your body being your body. So, even if you're tracking everything completely the way you're supposed to, illness can impact your hormone cycle, travel can impact your hormone cycle,
Dehydration.
stress, which is at levels of stun in America right now, impacts a woman's hormonal cycle and output. So it is not a method of contraception, and nobody should be calling it that, in my view.
No, Vicky in the chat says it's because they're pro-birth and not pro-life, and I think that's an interesting, um, interesting take on that, and I tend to agree. If they were, I don't know, we can go on that route for a long time, but I want to then take that to hormone replacement therapy, because women who are going through perimenopause or menopause already are stuck with a big burden of trying to overcome you know, uh, there's been a backlash against hormone replacement for a long time. There's been a lot of pseudoscience about how terrible it is and how bad it is for your body. And women need to just age naturally and accept accept all these terrible things that happen to them during menopause. And I suspect, I'm sure white Christian nationalists really support hormone replacement therapy, right?
I, you know, I don't believe they do, and I don't believe
I
they
was
will.
teasing.
Yeah.
No,
So, I wrote last week about how it's a woman's calling to suffer. That's what they
right.
believe from the Bible because of Eve sinning first and God cursing Eve to, bear all these burdens as a result of her being the first one to eat the fruit and disobey God. And so menopause, therefore, is and perimenopause are natural things that God caused to happen in a woman's body. And so enduring those cycles of change are part of a woman's calling to suffer. And so, I'm in menopause now. So if I didn't have my hormone replacement therapy, my husband would probably divorce me. And
Well,
I tried, he's shaking his head over there, but
he's a good guy.
I
He wouldn't.
tried to do without it. I tried to be one of those women who are like, I'll tough it out. And, I could stand the hot flashes and some of that, but I did not sleep more than an hour for a month straight. And it was the not sleeping, not being able to sleep, being just absolutely utterly exhausted 100% of the time,
Yeah.
not being able to sleep, that I finally called my gynecologist and said, I have to have something. I can't do this. Oh, I can't. I'm never going to sleep again. And I used to be a champion sleeper. I was like the best sleeper I knew. So it was really strange for me for my body to change that much that quickly. And so it saved my life and my sanity because
Yeah.
I become ill when I don't sleep. And so that's why I chose to go on it. But, those kinds of helps are things that, help me not suffer in the sphere of white Christian nationalism. But there's also the problem that increasingly in the United States, menopause specialists also treat transgender people. It's a
Uh-huh.
natural pairing. And so, in fact, those kinds of specialists do a better job of figuring out how to help you with hormones than just here's a generic patch that we're going to slap on you and it's a one size fits all approach.
Right.
So, if they're determined to outlaw being transgender and block access to those therapies for transgender people, then it makes sense that they would at least make it a lot more difficult for women to use hormone replacement therapy to get it, because what if you're getting it for somebody and you're giving it to a transgender person? What if you're helping them evade the law? The availability of these things, of these therapies, I could see them attacking it from that perspective.
I mean, I think, when you apply a prohibition or when you outlaw anything that is, palliative or helps people or is a treatment for anything, then you create a black market for it. And the striking thing to me is that, the war on drugs, for example, they didn't really anticipate the black market, or maybe they did, but it wasn't their they just didn't understand that there would be a massive war on drugs that would lead to, billions and trillions of dollars of policing and policy and all of this. But these guys do. They see
Mm.
that there's going to be a black market. So I wonder, where is the legislation currently, and what concerns you most about replacement at this point? What's going to happen? in
I
other words.
haven't seen anyone trying to restrict hormone replacement therapy for women, but several states have effectively outlawed it for transgender people. They've done it under the guise in South Carolina, where I lived for a long time, is
Mhm.
one of the ones that did that. So they outlawed it for minors, people under 18, but then they came along and said if you accept public money as a hospital system, Medicare or Medicaid, it's outlawed for anyone. You can't use public money. And since we don't segregate where the money's coming from in these systems, you're taking public money, you're taking Medicare or Medicaid, automatically makes you violate the law if you give hormone replacement therapy or other gender affirming care to the transgender community.
Wow.
So that, and I think Ohio did the same thing. Several states have done that. So I would see them, rather than outlawing hormone replacement therapy outright, they would just make it extremely difficult to get. And women would have to jump through a number of hoops to get it. I could see them following Louisiana's path on abortion medication and making something like they did with mifepristone,
Right.
making it a controlled substance where you have to go through more hoops to get a prescription for it, and you get smaller amounts in each prescription, and they track all of it and all of that. So I could see them going in that direction to wear you out and wear you down and say, well, it's just not worth all this trouble or this expense, rather than outlawing it outright.
Yeah, right. It's like, work requirements for benefits. It's just an incredible amount of bureaucracy, and people drop, even people who are working and are entitled to benefits.
I mean,
Um,
and what's so ridiculous to me is in many other countries, you don't even have to have a prescription to get hormone replacement therapy. You walk into the pharmacy and say, "I want this," and you buy it over the counter.
yeah,
So that's
right.
how easy it's that easy to get in Mexico, just across the board. So, that they would put all of this red tape and bureaucracy on top of something like that because it is a lifeline for the transgender community, but they'll punish everyone. And that's their MO. So
Well,
more restrictions and making it harder to get for women in menopause and perimenopause, at a minimum, I could see them doing.
I mean, it feels like, trying to uh, punish, or fuck with the transgender community, and then hurting women is just icing on their cake, right?
Well, that
Like,
country hates women. The United States hates women. I say that all the
yeah.
time. Saying this is going to hurt women, Americans don't care. I mean, some do, the people here do, but, generally they don't care.
What is that? What is
So
that?
I
You're
don't
totally
understand it,
right.
but they don't. I mean, saying this will hurt women does not motivate enough Americans to do anything about anything. So I don't use that anymore. These are all ways that theocratic Christian nationalists are going to try to force everyone to live by their religious beliefs. And that's how we should be framing all of these discussions, because Americans as a majority don't care what happens to women, and trying to motivate Americans to care about an issue because it hurts women, to me, is useless. So talk about it as a theocratic Christian nationalist construct, and they're going to force everyone to live by their religious beliefs.
Let me ask you. I mean, this is a sort of side note. By the way, the chat is going wild. A lot of menopause stories, which we appreciate because women need to talk about it, because it has been such a verboten topic for so many years, and I saw my own mother and my grandmother struggling through these things that nobody could understand because nobody could talk about it. And what a bullshit way to live your life.
Mhm.
Like, you need support. You need support. So I'm glad everyone is talking about it. And Andrew, I'm always glad you're so open to talk about everything. It shouldn't be an issue, really, if we're being honest. But I wanted to sort of just give us a side question. I think I ask you this a lot because I have such trouble getting my head around it. This idea that the Christian nationalists want to force everyone into their way of living. Did they Is there a part of them that believes that once we all start living under their values and ideas that we're all just going to love it and there will be no problems and there will be peace and everyone will get along? Or what is their end game with this? I mean, because
It depends on the faction of Christian nationalism that you're in currently. So, and this is gonna be review for some of you and new for some of you, but there is just 3 distinct factions in Christian nationalism. There's the Opus Dei Catholicism, which J.D. Vance is a part of. Sam Alito, Clarence
uh,
Thomas are parts of, they're affiliated with Opus Dei. So Opus Dei believes that the whole planet needs to be taken back to the one true faith, which is Catholicism, and everyone needs to be forced to practice the true faith. And everyone needs to be brought back to that. If they need to do crusades, if they need to do inquisitions, you know, full scale medieval times is what they would want to bring back, but with surveillance, you know, with 21st century tools to do that. Dominionists are a Protestant version of Opus Dei because they
uh,
have the same belief, like we have to make the whole planet worship our one true faith, which is from the charismatic movement in the Protestant side of Christianity. But they believe they have to make the earth, everyone on earth, practice their version of Christianity so that Jesus can return to this utopia on earth and that Jesus won't return. And therefore, all of them are suffering because of all of us who won't submit to them. And so that they are charged with doing that to make the earth perfect enough for Jesus to return to. I grew up in the evangelical Baptist Presbyterian, Protestant side of Christian nationalism,
okay.
which also believes that we need to force everybody else to live by our version of Christianity, which is different from the other two. They don't agree about who's going to heaven, but they are more of the apocalyptic ones who are
I see.
saying, the failure of America right now would be the greatest thing because America's not in the Bible, and that just means Jesus is going to come back faster. Things have to get so terrible before Jesus can come back. So those are the 3 distinct factions. And then you have Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and people like that, who I was always taught were not really Christians. They were in a cult, but they also have similar beliefs and are part of this Christian nationalist faction.
Yeah.
So, I think today we want to talk about one of their big proponents, though, who's got a prominent place in the government to help
Yes.
people understand how they're wielding that.
Yeah, I thought, for these conversations, it might be good to kind of check in with one of these people, each week. A Know Your Fascist, segment of the show. And this week, I think it's fair to start with Russell Vought, um, who is the, director of the, Office of Management and Budget. And everyone knows the name by now. In January, when Trump came into office, I think a few people knew his name. He's a co-author of Project 2025. And he has said things like, my viewpoint is mostly that I would probably be Christian nationism. That's pretty close to Christian nationalism because I also believe in nationalism. He he really believes in, um, and I have a question after this, but he really believes in instilling his Christian faith, as we've been talking about, onto the nation in general and all of the people within it. So I want to ask, what he says. We need Christian values in our system of government and culturally and socially and all of these things. What Christian values?
His Christian values.
And what do those look like?
A white Christian nationalist like Russell Vought, and anytime I talk about him, he is a highly radicalized, extremist Christian nationalist. And he would take that framing of his faith as a compliment
Right.
because being fanatical for your faith in Christian nationalism, being viewed as a fanatic is not a bad thing. He's but he's also a highly intelligent man. He is very effective at operating within the confines of government and doing his job. So one of the reasons that they've gotten as far as they have is because of Russell Vogt. He is ruthlessly effective at what he does. And what he believes is that the United States was founded as a white Christian nation, and that the founders all intended for Christianity to be the religion of this nation, the official religion, even though I don't know where they get that from, but that's what I was taught as a child in a white Christian nationalist church and school. So he believes that we were founded as a Christian nation and for white people, and that, because the pilgrims and others came here to flee religious persecution in Europe, that is a lot of the basis for why they believe that. And he believes that the Bible is God's perfect law, that laws that God wrote out in the Bible are what we should be living by. And so that gives him the right to interpret those laws for us today and make laws and say we have to live under these laws. God is God. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. It doesn't matter whether you agree with the Bible or whether you even read the Bible or care about the Bible. God is God. God's law is God's law, and everybody is supposed to live by God's law. And so that is what is driving Russ Vogt's transformation of the government, particularly. He and Pete Hegseth are one and the same on that score. It should be white men, white Christian men who have power. And anyone else who stands in the way, that's why the loyalty tests are happening in the government. That's
Right.
why people are being fired for not going along with the Christianization of government. When Pete Hegseth started doing his services at the Pentagon, I was screeching about the services at the Pentagon because that was a loyalty test. They didn't fire anyone
Of course.
immediately for not going, but I said eventually they will start, because Russ Vought has stated very clearly that only Christian nationalists should be serving in government, and only Christian nationalists should be eligible to run for elected office. That's what he believes. So, he is ruthlessly trying to put that belief system in place and create a theocratic government. And he's
And
very good at his job. He's very good at it.
it's working, and I think he chose OMB for that reason. He saw that, like, he understands the bureaucracy better than maybe, well, certainly anyone in the administration.
Yeah.
But
I
that's
mean,
like kind of a low bar, if we're being honest.
I
Uh,
joked with my husband. It's not really a joke, though. I mean, Russ Vought is passionate about the Christian nationalist part of white Christian nationalism.
yeah.
He's a white supremacist as well, but he's passionate about the Christian nationalist part. Stephen Miller is passionate about the white part.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so together, the two of them, I joke with Michael that they're really the president, but
No
it's like, I
question.
mean, the two of them are just so ruthlessly effective about what they're passionate about.
Mhm.
And they've been given free reign to run with their passions and try to transform the government and the country to mirror their passion.
Yeah, he said things like, "The duty is ours, the results are God's,"
Mhm.
and he takes that duty very seriously. He's also talked about, there's I think a lot of us are like, "Well, how are these people behind Trump, the worst human being who's, just the most immoral," but he's called Trump a gift from God. He
I
believes
mean,
the president is not bound by certain legal limits, like Posse Comitatus Act, like all of those things, and he understands how to get what he needs from a guy like Trump.
yeah, no, it's very difficult, because I've always said when I was writing about this last year, and I continue to say, we pay so much attention to the figurehead,
Yeah.
but he's just a tool. the people behind him are who we should be really afraid of and talking a lot more about. And Russ
Yes.
Vought is one of those people. He is ruthlessly effective, very good at his job.
He's
And
very
and
good.
and and these people are very determined to succeed. So, every time I get tempted to follow one of these bright shiny object things that the figurehead puts up, I stop
Yeah.
because that's just not, we need to be following a lot more what the people behind him are doing.
Yeah, I think, we've been talking about this at Lincoln Square a lot. Trump is a master distractor.
Mhm.
He's always been great at distraction. But as his policies are just hitting the fan, and even farmers in the South are, like, what is happening? Why am I going bankrupt right now? Must be Obama or something, right? He's
That's
his
not
distract.
racist at all. I mean, it's not
No,
racism.
no, not at all. Not even a little bit. They're just honest, hardworking white people. Um, but uh, but Trump's distractions are growing more and more dangerous, which is this convergence of the white Christian nationalists in and white and Christian and nationalists in his administration, butting up against Trump's desperation. And now Trump is sending the Navy to kill civilians and off the coast of other countries.
Mhm.
These distractions suddenly now have really dramatic and catastrophic effects. And I think all of these things converging are hard for everyone, all of us, and everyone in the audience, and me and you and everyone to really sort and parse and get our heads around. But you really have to keep your eye on what we're doing, and forming a real opposition. The distraction is, yeah, we we shouldn't be killing civilians in other countries. We shouldn't be kidnapping people off the streets in our own. Um, we have to fight. We have to form a real opposition. So I'm one just to leave it with this. I would like to know, how do we form an opposition? What do we? How do we? Have the Neo from the Matrix moment where we just see everything so clearly. And what is the path forward? How do we do this?
It's so hard because Americans are not taught to form coalitions.
For
It's a
individual.
capitalist construct that you are an individual and you should have your individual happiness and not form coalitions. So, it's been very difficult to watch how little Americans have come together and how few really see this moment as to be as perilous as it is.
Yeah.
Um, Talk about this in your communities. We have to keep talking about it. And the various peoples in your communities better than anyone. So, what motivates people in your communities? And you might have to use different tools and talking points with each group or with each individual to get
Hmm.
people to see what's happening. Um, I have encouraged people to boycott and to not spend money and to withhold money from the economy, especially from these fascist companies that are kissing the ring. And people always say, well, that's going to hurt people. Everybody's going to hurt now.
Yeah.
That we keep trying to keep things going to keep the hurt. Everybody's going to hurt now. We're not going to stop that now. There's going to be no way through this that's not going to hurt. So, we can hurt now to hopefully stop this, or we can live for years or decades with a lot of hurt all the time. So, these are concepts that Americans have a hard time wrapping their minds around, but they're reality. So, talk about this. Explain to people that this really is one group of people trying to force their religious beliefs on everyone and make everyone live by them. Somebody asked in the chat, how do they justify killing people? You know, and
Right.
making people hurt. And it's that they believe so strongly that they are personally called to force everyone to do this, that a bunch of casualties don't matter. This is a righteous, holy war. and they
Yep.
talk about spiritual warfare and holy war very often. So casualties happen in a war, right? So there are going to be casualties, and they don't care about that. So, that's the answer to the question that I saw.
And this, I think this is a problem of blind faith you think about, the guy who shot up the pizza place, um, because he thought they were trafficking children in, the basement.
Mhm,
If you really have this blind faith that children are being dramatically harmed somewhere and you have the ability to stop it, then you have a moral obligation, right?
mhm,
To do essentially what he did. But it's blind faith. It's not based on any fact or it's just your belief,
mhm,
right? And just as the Opus Dei and the Dominionists have their quirks and they're like, we're right, no, we're right. y- Nobody's right. We're all just here. Like, it's the faith that's killing us.
Well,
Um,
it's the certainty that's killing us.
Certainty, sure. Yeah,
Certainty is not faith.
right.
Certainty is the opposite of faith. And Christian nationalists are certain that they're right, even though the factions don't even agree about who's going to heaven or
Yeah,
how you
yeah,
get there. But they're all certain that they're right. So, talking about those differences is another way to try. I wish more people, even though we barely have a press in this country now, but I wish
yeah,
more people would ask somebody like Mike Johnson, how do you get to heaven? And let him say how he thinks you get to heaven as a Baptist. So then go
yeah.
ask Sam Alito, how do you get to heaven? So that he can give his standard Opus Dei Catholic answer, which will be different. And then go back to Mike
Divide and
Johnson
conquer.
and say, Sam Alito basically said, you're not going to heaven. What do you have to say about that? I mean, that's how we should be driving wedges between these people now, but nobody does
Oh, I love it. Next time I talk to Alito, I'll ask him. Uh, Andra, I could go on and on, but I really appreciate you, and I do love these conversations. And next week I would like to ask you in the audience, who should we cover next week?
Somebody
Who should we?
mentioned Kevin Roberts in the chat, so we should definitely talk about him.
Oh, I don't even know Kevin Roberts.
Oh, he's
Well,
the head of the Heritage Foundation. We'll talk about
okay,
him.
Kevin Roberts. I'll make a note. Kevin Roberts next week. Uh, Andra, thank you so much, and everyone, thanks for tuning in. And we will see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for being here.